Today, we will be talking about the simulation hypothesis. Could we be living in a simulated universe? Now, first, I'd like to talk a bit about why I chose this topic. Why existentialism? Now, existentialism is essential in making sense of the world around us and in bringing comfort in knowing what our lives mean. It gives us definition, right? Um, Ever since we could use our metacognitive skills, we've been trying to make sense of what goes on around us, whether we do this by expressing ourselves by writing on caves, whether we do this by communicating with our environment, those within our environment, or those who may be beyond our environment. Um, since existentialism can change your life, you may end up making better decisions or making decisions with better intentions, thus effectively leading to better outcomes. Now, are we living in a simulated universe? The short answer is yes. Based on the analysis on the subject, based or by scientists and philosophers such as Elon Musk, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Albert Camus, and Jean-Paul Sartre, who is a French philosopher whose name is very hard to pronounce. We are most likely simulated or living in a simulated universe. Now, this is a very not controversial, but unconventional topic to talk about. Oftentimes when people bring it up, it's dismissed as a conspiracy theory, or it's not taken as seriously as we should be taking it, which obviously will not work if we want to have an effective dialogue about existentialism. Now, it may make us uncomfortable, but again, just as we talked about in the last slide, it is pretty necessary for us to be able to talk about this in a serious manner. Now, what is the simulation hypothesis? The simulation hypothesis, according to a Swedish philosopher by the name of Nick Bostrom, states that one of three things is possible. Either one, all human-like civilizations will go extinct before they develop the technology necessary to create a simulated universe. Two, civilizations will become advanced enough to the point where they do have the technology to simulate a universe, and they will do this effectively and do it many, many times to the point where the number of simulated universes exceeds the number of universes that exceeds the number of universes that are original. Or three, if a universe does reach the point where they are able to simulate another universe, they just do not do it. Now, Elon Musk talked a bit about the simulation hypothesis and said that there's an inevitable ceiling to our advancement. This was in an interview with Larry King when he stated that when it comes to the simulation hypothesis, he agrees with Bostrom in that he believes that eventually we will reach our technological ceiling. Bostrom also stated that the second option in the three parts of the hypothesis is what he believed would happen, in that there are so many simulated universes that they're so numerous that there are more simulated universes than original ones. Now, here are some examples of human-made simulations, just to list a few. Video games are obviously the most popular. The difference between a video game and real life being that a video game was simulated by humans. It was simulated by us. Now, depending on the game, there is an assortment of possible outcomes that could occur. It's quite possible that these are the circumstances of our reality too. In a video game, there is code written by a human onto a computer that constitutes what could or could not happen. The equivalent of such code in our reality is hard science. So that would come in the form of physics, chemistry, biology, etc. We have been considering, and here's another example, bringing the woolly mammoth back from extinction, which poses a serious moral concern. How would this woolly mammoth be able to survive? Would they be able to reproduce? Would they be happy, quite frankly? And this is an example of the third part of Bostrom's simulation hypothesis, in that we have the ability to bring this animal back that was extinct for a while, but we just probably won't, just because it poses that serious moral concern. Now, here are some other examples of simulations. The show Rick and Morty had their own little play on it. One of the episodes was called the multiverse episode. Rick creates a miniverse that powers his car battery, and essentially the way it works is that he has created a universe inside of a car battery that consists of human-like entities that stomp on these boxes that generate these power lines that overall power a car battery. And so one of the scientists in this universe creates the same exact thing as, an alternative power source, so that people do not have to go through that manual labor just to generate power. And ironically enough, he calls it, the scientist in Rick's car battery calls it a teeniverse. And that scientist uses that to power the world. Now, if this is relative to our reality at all, it would just support the statements in the second part of the hypothesis made by Bostrom, in the fact that there are so many universes, simulated universes, that the number of simulated universes exceeds the number of non-simulated or original universes. Now, we should talk a bit about free will. Some philosophers believe that although we do, or we have the ability to affect the events which occur around us, we do not truly matter. Albert Camus stated that humans and all human experiences are meaningless. This is essential in understanding that because we can do whatever we want, just because we have that ability does not mean that we also possess the ability to alter the fact that we are in a simulation. Further, what we perceive to be free will may not actually be free will, right? Who's to say that every single movement that we make isn't scripted or put in our mind by somebody that is not our conscious? This is actually in direct correlation with the topic of theology, which we will get into now. So in terms of theology, it seems that there's a certain comfort in the fact that if we are a simulation, we wouldn't really know it. Whether we are a simulation or not shouldn't change our morals. And no matter what, we should treat everybody with respect, and we should try to be the best people that we should be. That is the cornerstone of faith. Religion is actually one of the ways that we make sense of the world around us. One of the most popular religions in existence, obviously, is Christianity. Now, in a sense, a belief in Christianity is a belief in the simulation hypothesis, or the simulation theory, rather. In the Bible, it states that, quote unquote, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Now, this essentially means that, or it can be perceived as God being the creator of this simulation, right? God is the creator, and God has plans for all of us in all of our lives, right? Now, even that, God having a plan for our lives and having a plan in it with an end result could be argued by philosophers such as Rick Terrell, that the simulation hypothesis is directly related to religion. If the hypothesis is in fact correct, there is a creator and there is an architect. Now, if those two words sound familiar, those were the words used to describe God in the book of Genesis. According to Terrell, who is a computer scientist actually at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, the hypothesis starts to look like a religion with a programmer substituting for God. Now, again, when taken seriously, this makes a lot of sense. Now, we should also talk about objective and subjective reality. Objective versus subjective reality is necessary to understand for this discussion because it can be hard to differentiate the two. Arguably, although no one is there to observe a flower's beauty, that does not mean the flower is still not beautiful. If a tree falls and no one is around to hear the sound of it falling, that doesn't mean it does not make any noise. right? The entirety of this argument depends on the individuals arguing. With this in mind, we must ask, is the simulation based on or around someone else's idea of subjective versus objective reality? Now, upon first inspection, the obvious answer would seem to be that we are all living in the simulator's reality. But after thinking about it a bit more, it would make sense that we may not even all be living in the same reality. Who's to say that what you're seeing right now is not the objective truth? Who's to say that what you're seeing right now is not actually there? And no matter what we do, there's no real way to prove that. Now, in attempts to make sense of it all, as mentioned by Neil deGrasse Tyson, there will never, or has never been rather, a useless simulation, right? Each and every simulation we have, whether it be video games or actual simulations like drills, they all have a point, right? Whether it be a flight simulator, a farming simulator, a basketball simulator, a driving simulator, a war simulator, they all have points, whether it's entertainment, whether it is for educational purposes, whatever it may be, all of them have a point. They all serve some type of function to the person running it, right? Although our simulations do not have artificial intelligence, the point is that our simulators technology will be far more savvy than ours. No purpose means no function. Now, it's not, well, Tyson gives credit to Bostrom's simulation hypothesis, as he explains that if simulated worlds kept on figuring out how to simulate worlds, the chain would never stop. And again, the number of simulated universes would exceed the number of original universes by a large margin. He states that, deGrasse Tyson states that statistically, it's hard to argue against the possibility that all of us are not the creation of some kid in a parent's basement programming a world for their own entertainment. Now, again, as mentioned earlier in the last slide, all simulations must have a purpose. If it didn't have a purpose, it's not a good simulation. He goes on to make the point that anytime something odd happens, anytime something out of the ordinary happens, anytime something tragic may happen, every time there's a disruption in the world, essentially, it's quite possible that the simulation got bored, or the simulator, got bored, and our purpose is to entertain our simulator. Now, with the recent events, it would make a lot of sense that our simulator felt that things were beginning to get monotonous. And so there was a pandemic that wiped out a large percentage of the world's population. There's the looming threat of nuclear warfare again. The political tensions in the United States are at an all-time high, and there are tragedies going on all around the world. This has been a very eventful year, and so there, essentially, there have been many rifts in the simulation. Now, what does this all mean? Just as stated before, just because we are living in a simulation does not mean that we should be afraid of anything, nor does it mean that we should change our morals or our actions. We shouldn't act selfishly or take advantage of our free will. And maybe there is an inevitable end to life. Maybe the choices that we make do matter. No matter what the case may be, all simulations must come to an end. Here are my references.